Hi, I'm Rusty Hudson, lead pastor at Cornerstone Church. And our story begins in June of 1999 when the Alabama West Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church appointed me to start a new work here in the Auburn area. And so in August of that year, my wife Becky and I and our three sons, Michael, Wesley, and Will, moved here and began a new work. That fall, we gathered a group of about 45 people, and they became a core group for our church. And we began to pray together and to vision and to seek God in terms of what type of a church this would be. And we decided we wanted to reach people who were far from God, those who were unchurched or de-churched. And so we began to plan and pray about what that would look like. The date that we picked for public worship was January 9th, 2000. And the place that we found was the Skate Center in Auburn. And so on that day, we opened up for public worship, and we watched 235 people walk through the doors, and we knew that God was doing something special. So we began to meet there every week, and several things marked us in those early days. We had worship that was led by a band that was exciting and upbeat with very relevant music. It was a lot of fun. We did some surprising things on Sunday mornings, but also many lives were changed. And every so often we would have baptisms, and the way we did that was we would go outside the Skate Center on the steps, blow up a small pool, and baptize people. And those were very, very special moments in those early days, especially as we watched people give their heart and their life to Christ. And then also we had groups that were meeting in the homes or in restaurants or businesses during the week. They did that for fellowship, for encouragement, to get to know one another, to study together, and for encouragement and to care for each other. Also, serving was a very big part of who we were in those early days. It took a lot to make every Sunday happen. We had 2 trailers that we packed up with all of our chairs and tables, plants, sound equipment, toys for the kids area, and we would unload those trailers, set it up for worship, and then a couple hours later we would pack it all up and put it back. And so we had teams of people that would do that every single week. And so we learned something about the value of serving through those times together and how important that is. And also we learned that the Skate Center building was not the church. The church is not about a building, that it was about the people. And so we worked hard to focus on people in those days and the relationships that we formed and that we built. And serving spilled over into our community. We would also do things called servant evangelism projects, where we would go to big gatherings and we would give away free bottled water to everybody there. And just a reminder that God's love is free and that there's no strings attached. And we would do that, and it would change the people who we gave the water to. Oftentimes they would show up at our church, but also just those who were serving found it so meaningful and so important to be reminded of making this connection of God to people and really letting them know how much God cares for them. And so those became the vehicles for helping us meet our mission of leading people to know and serve Jesus, worshiping, participating in small groups, and then serving together. Eventually, serving would take us to places outside of our country, to Ecuador, to Uganda, where we've been invested for a long time now, and then also to Nicaragua. And so we continued to grow in the Skate Center for almost 6 years, and eventually we would outgrow the Skate Center area, our kids area and the parking there, and we knew that we had to leave. The conference helped us purchase 20 acres of property on Hamilton Road in Auburn. And so we decided to have a campaign to raise the funds necessary to build a new building. And we did that in the fall of 2004. We had a goal of $1 million. And so we had the campaign, we raised the funds, and miraculously we ended up raising $1.2 million toward a new building. And so in December of 2004, we broke ground. And then exactly a year later, in December of 2005, construction was finished, and we took possession of that building. And 2 months after we entered the building, in February of that year, we had to go to 2 services. 3 years later, we would outgrow 3 services, and we knew that at that point we had to do something else. And so we decided to construct another worship space. We got our architects together. We knew we had to go back to the bank for a loan, but the recession had changed the economy in that day, and banks wouldn't loan very much money to a church. And so we decided instead of a new building, we would be new again And we decided to start another site, to take some of our own people out of our building and location and to put them in another place with another pastor. And so we raised up 175 people, and one of the pastors on staff at the time, Josh Agerton, and we sent them to Lee Scott Academy, to the gym there, and they began to worship there in February of 2012. And they began to grow and to carry out our mission there of leading people to know and serve Jesus. A year later, we decided to try another work, and we sent several families and our worship leader at the time, Brian Johnson, over to Opelika to the Irish Bread Pub restaurant. And that was to reach a group of people who would definitely not be coming to a church anywhere, or to even to our church in Auburn. And so he began to reach people that were very far from God in a very different way, and God did a beautiful work there. So for almost 4 years, Josh and the group worshiped at Lee Scott Academy. They became a very independent group and began to sort of claim their own identity. And one day we decided that it was better for them to launch out on their own, to become their own church. So in January of 2016, we launched them out as a new church, and they took on the name Embrace Church. Brian Johnson had been called to another church in the Midwest, and so that season of ministry at the Bread Pub in Opelika came to a close. And so now we're continuing to vision for what the future holds for Cornerstone. We still have multiplication in our DNA, and we want to continue to make disciples in any and every way that we can as God takes us into the future and as we lead more people to know and serve Jesus.